Hi, and welcome to my Messy Muse, a place for kidlit peeps to embrace the messiness of their everyday lives. Through interviews with fabulous kidlit talent, editors, and agents who share their own personal struggles, we will inspire your kidlit journey. I'm your host, Michelle McAvoy, an author, attorney, and mom of two whose life is really, really messy. I turn it around almost every single day, and so can you. Hi, and welcome to episode 5 of my Messy Muse. Today is the first in our Ask an Agent series. Our very special guest is Stephanie Hansel, senior agent and owner of Metamorphosis Literary Agency. We solicited your agent questions, and Stephanie answered. Also, as a very special treat for our My Messy Muse members only, Stephanie will open up to queries from Monday, December 17th through Friday, December 21st. Details about submission will be posted in the My Messy Muse private Facebook group. You can join for free. You can search Facebook for My Messy Muse. We will also put a link in the show notes here for how you can find us on Facebook. We would love to have you and see you in the community. Now let's get started with the interview. Hi, Ms. Hansel.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. It's, the holiday season and the illness season, but so far so good.
Right, you're holding it. Well, I am ill myself, if everybody can hear my lovely, raspy, sexy voice. So please excuse that and any coughing you may hear, but the show must go on. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for being really the first in our Ask an Agent series. Here on My Messy Muse, we really want to provide meaningful content to our members. And having this Ask an Agent series and opportunity is one of those ways. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And so without further ado, I'm going to start with the questions because we got a lot of activity for you. And we're on short time because we don't like to go too long. So the first question for Ask an Agent is this. Stephanie, how do you balance the time it takes to work with your current clients and to look for new clients?
I don't sleep.
Oh,
just kidding.
You're not kidding. I don't think you're kidding.
I have a phenomenal team that works with me. And, it greatly varies. So, one day I might only receive a dozen queries, or if we have a spotlight on Writer's Digest, I might receive over 100 queries in a day. So it definitely is a moving target. And so we just have to adapt and adjust as activity fluctuates. But we have 6 interns now, one starting from a university in January, and we also have 6 agents and junior agents combined. So we have a phenomenal team put together, and we definitely make sure that if someone has too much on their plate, we move things around so everyone's able to handle it all.
Fantastic. So you guys are very busy.
Yes.
But handling it all, keeping all the balls in the air, so to speak.
Yes.
Number 2, I'm wondering what agents look for. I mean, other than pure genius.
Again, that's a moving target, and here's a secret for me. I skip the query and I go directly to the writing. Whether it's picture book or novel, I go directly to the writing. And if the voice speaks to me, then I continue. There are multiple things that we look for. We look for social media presence. We look for experience. We look for a query that's well put together. I enjoy people who kind of follow just the template, a brief introduction, tell me what you're pitching me, and a little bit more about yourself. Sometimes when people get a little bit too overflowery, I get lost in all that's going on. And when, if I do receive 100 in a day, it can make it difficult to dig down and find what's there.
So you skip to the writing first, and then if you like what you're reading, you will go back to look at the query to look at social media presence and sort of how well they put together their query.
Correct. And I know that's completely backwards, but that is the way I enjoy going through submissions.
Hey, to each his own, and you're probably not the only agent that does that. So maybe you're the only one that's admitting it. No, I'm just kidding. Um, okay, number 3. Why is there a lack of interest in new adult science fiction romance?
Well, everything is cyclical. So things that are popular right now might not be popular in a couple years, but then they'll more than likely be popular again a couple years after that. So I don't know the specific reason. I do see there's a couple things about that question that kind of um, stand out to me. And if you go to any new adult section, uh, it's all romance.
Hmm.
So a lot of people, writers get a little bit confused. They might have a manuscript that it's not in the young adult age group, but it's not quite adult. It's in that college age. And so they want to throw it in the quote unquote new adult section.
Hmm.
But new adult is specifically, it is romance. And so stating that new adult science fiction romance is somewhat repetitive to me. Uh, I also something so right now I think contemporary romance new adults are more successful, but give it a couple more years and I think fantasy and science fiction will be back up there. One thing that I personally see with new adult that comes in is there's a struggle to get that voice right. So often a new adult manuscript that I receive might have more of a YA voice or it might have more of an adult voice. And so it's a very small margin to meet. And I think it's something difficult to do. Once you get a hang of it, then you run with it. But um, that's what I have experienced with new adult science fiction romance.
Okay, that's fair. Um, Number 4. Excuse me. My historical romance thriller is complete at 106,000 and flow well at that length. Would it be better to cut it down further now and lose a story element, or should I query it and let a potential agent decide what to cut?
Okay, so this question is a little difficult to answer too, especially without seeing the manuscript and reading through it. But I do kind of have to caution on the side of, you're if you're looking for an agent, you will potentially go through at least one edit, if not more, with your agent, and then even more with your publisher. And so I'm a little bit worried that they're concerned about losing an element just by cutting words. I think as an author, you have to be able to adapt and adjust a little bit when you're working in the traditional world. And so and then another thing that stands out to me is the historical romance thriller. Is it a romance or is it a thriller? Because that could change on the word count that we're looking for. But without seeing the manuscript, I can't tell whether it reads more one way or the other. So there's a lot to go into it. I really think it would be in the author's best interest to give it a go to try to cut down that word count. But like I said, without reading the manuscript, it's hard for me to tell whether it is more on the romance side or the thriller side.
And so, if it was more romance, it has a different word count than it would for a thriller.
I think romance would be looking for a lower word count, whereas thriller, depending on the historical facts and things that are thrown into it, it might give more leeway and tend toward the higher word count. So,
Okay.
yeah, it just really depends. There's many moving parts and different pieces that make that decision, but I have some concern with um, the worry that the author has of cutting the word count.
Okay. Good point. Okay, number 5. When will I know that it is time to shop for an agent for my book?
That again, that's a difficult question to answer. I personally could edit and edit and edit over and over again, and I would never feel like my personal work is ready.
Right.
So I definitely feel and understand for this concern. Um, I mean, when your book is completely polished, that's when you should shop agents. I think a lot of authors, they get that manuscript finished, which is, I mean, that's a huge, magnificent goal achieved, but it's not ready at that point to go out to agents. It does need to, whether it be a critique group or beta readers, or if you do have an editor review it, whatever you choose, there should be some of that process before it goes out to agents.
Fantastic. Okay, number 6. What does your ideal platform social presence look like for an author that is querying?
They have 1 million followers and they
Yeah.
get thousands of likes.
Perfect. That's everybody, right?
Yeah. I mean,
That's easy.
I if writing is phenomenal, I can work with an author and help them. Our team, something that's somewhat different with our agency, although I think many agencies are adopting this, is we like to try to assist and help with building author platforms, whether it be via interviews or social media contacts and sharing. We definitely try to help authors build that platform. So if you have a manuscript that's polished and just beautifully written, but you're lacking on the social media platform side, we can work with that. Whereas the opposite is difficult to do. If you have the great social media platform but no manuscript, then we can't really work with that. But yeah, I mean, obviously, especially going to a publishing house, if they can see that you are going to move tons of product, then I mean that makes helps their decision.
Yep. Okay, great. Number 7. What do you like to see platform-wise in the author's bio in query letters? I guess that's more or less the same question as before.
Kind of. And like I said, I skip that part and I read the manuscript first.
Right.
So, but when I do go to an author, like when I first am introduced to an author, I don't mind having links in an email. I don't know that every agent will click on those links. But what I like to see is instead of millions of followers, if you only have a few hundred followers, but all of those, but like 75% to 85% are engaged with you and you're having comments, you have regular basis of comments and posts and likes, and just really it's that engagement. I would
Mhm.
prefer have a few hundred followers that are engaged than millions that aren't. So that is something I look for.
Nice. And so do you click on those links when you have, I guess if you have a query, if you've read something you're interested, you click on those links to find out more about the author?
I can either click on the links or I can Google the author too, or if they have something previously on Amazon, we can do a little bit of research outside of the query and see what's out there.
Okay. Next question. How do you feel about leading with a pitch in a query letter? And a lot of these questions are about the query letters, and I think the answer is you don't read them first, but how do you feel about leading with the pitch in a query letter?
So again, I like the template, hi Stephanie, what's up? I have this manuscript. It's a new adult contemporary at 80,000 words, and then the brief summary, and then the author bio and a polite close. That is kind of the template that I like to see when you're looking at dozens or hundreds at a time. It definitely helps my ability to streamline through the process. So sometimes authors come up with really fun, gimmicky openings, and perhaps for some agents, they would love that. Gimmicky, I don't know if that's the word I would go for, but just really outside of the box, very interesting ways of going about pitching agents. I've even received via snail mail a letter that looked like it had been aged 100 years, and that was the query letter. I mean, like
Oh
we,
no.
yeah, so it can be a little bit interesting and daunting. So I kind of really caution going too outside of the box, and I would definitely have other people review it and look at what you're putting out there before it goes. I think it can be done right, and it can capture some agents' attention. I think for me, just because of the busy life and all that stuff, I really like to stick to the good old query template and not really go outside of that. But that's a personal preference. So I don't know exactly what they mean by their pitch first. It depends on what that pitch is, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's should always be a balance of creativity and professionalism, right? So I think a lot of us creatives like to exude that in a paper or to the agent, but I think for the query letters, it's probably best to be more professional than than crazy creative, right? Save the creativity to the manuscript.
Yes, yes. And in the summary, if you want to somehow capture the voice from the manuscript into the summary and kind of speak from the protagonist's point of view, I'm okay with that in 2 to 3 paragraphs, probably maybe even that's, max two. Um, Again, when you're looking at hundreds, if it gets a little bit on the long-winded side, that can hinder an agent as well, which I mean, long-winded when we're reading, manuscripts that are 80,000 words. I know that's hard to, but when it comes to the query, it's really good to kind of stick to the point.
Yep. Okay. Next question. Are agents, publishers more hesitant to take on younger, ex-college aged or high school aged writers, or do things like that, actually not factor into their decision?
So for me, again, it's the writing speaks first to me. And whether you're 80 years old or 18 years old, it doesn't make a difference if you have that voice and the writing, if it's well done. Um, that being said, there are some roadblocks if you're trying to sign a contract with a minor. It doesn't mean that it can't be done or that it wouldn't be done, but it just means that there's more that goes into the efforts and signing process and everything. So I think it's more just looking at that. But I think there are quite a few publishers that even run anthologies and different contests that specifically target high school age
Right.
writers. So I think everything is out there and available, and there are those opportunities. I think it just changes the way it's handled depending on if there are any differences like that, if you're a minor and need someone else to sign for you or co-sign.
Right. Okay. Um, Next, is Twitter really the best way to find an agent?
I didn't know Twitter was the best way to go.
We're all on Twitter, right? We're all on Twitter.
Yes, I mean, Twitter has huge different, pitch events that are phenomenal, and it's a great way to find exposure. It's a wonderful way to find other authors, and to see what agents and editors are looking for. So I definitely think Twitter is a great means for that, but I don't know that I would say it's the best way. I think many agents are still very comfortable with receiving exactly how their submission guidelines state, whether it be via email or some online submission platform. I think those work just as well, if not better, than Twitter. So either way is fine.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we all get caught up in Twitter. I know I do sometimes. I fall into the rabbit hole of Twitter, but I think when you send an agent a query by email, sometimes you feel like it goes into an abyss, maybe, because I've been there, but they're being read, right? I mean, everybody has their own process, but they are being read. Somebody's on the other side looking at them.
Yes.
Okay, next question. Why do some agents request partials and other request fulls?
Now, so I don't know if this is upon initial query or if it's follow up on the query that they're asking about. And that can, again, I do believe this is a personal preference. I ask for the first 3 chapters. With a picture book, I like to see the entire thing right away. But I ask for the first 3 chapters, and then if I enjoy the first 3 chapters, I request a full at that point. But there are many agents that perhaps they're not fully sold with the first 3 chapters, and they're not sure that it just didn't knock it out of the ballpark. But they would like to see a little bit more to see if perhaps sometimes authors are a little bit slow in their opening,
Mm-hmm.
or something to that nature. And so then they can just read through a few more chapters instead of reading through the entire thing. It might be something that I adopt going forward, but so far with the initial query, I have the first 3 chapters, and then I either request the full, or sometimes I send a revise and resubmit, or our passes are if we don't respond within 3 months on a query, it is a pass.
Okay. And next question, how can someone find a mentorship or best resources for the process?
That is a wonderful question. You know, depending on your location and your genre. So SCBWI, which you're familiar with, Michelle,
Mm-hmm.
it is a phenomenal resource. I know they have critique groups, and some of them are online, some meet in person, depending on A, what you like, or B, if it's difficult for you to travel to, maybe you're not near a major city or what have you, it might be easier to just critique via an online forum.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's also, I mean, for some writers, they were MFAs or they have an English degree and therefore they were part of a group, and also often tend to be part of a literary magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so those are available. Twitter has some things out there that's available. Now for mentorship, um, I guess I'm not 100%. Are they asking for mentorship as an author
You
or?
know, I think this individual has a manuscript. She's been writing for some time, and I think just a general mentorship or someone that can advise her on sort of walking through the entire process, right? Going from agenting, querying for agents, just understanding the process and somebody there to help in that respect.
So there are things available online. Writer's Digest has quite a few helpful hints that here and there in articles. I would suggest if you have the means again to attend writers conferences, and often libraries will also have speaking events that are free to the public that will advise how to handle different situations. But it's also, this again is a moving target. 20 years ago, it was you sent snail mail your manuscript with a SASE, a self-addressed stamped envelope. Now it's predominantly email or online submission, and it will change. So there's a lot available, but it's also staying on top of the industry and getting involved with different groups will help out.
Yeah, I agree. I think going to those different conferences and being involved in very different spaces enables you to just learn more. You just take it in by being a part of the group, and so you will understand the mechanics of it better than when you did when you were just a complete newbie, right? When you just had something written and were like, "Hey, I want to get this out there." Just sort of being
Yes.
involved,
You'll
inevitably you'll understand more.
Oh, yes. And you'll also build your author platform while you're doing that because the people you meet at the conferences, you're probably going to friend, and perhaps they have a podcast that you can join. There are so many things out there, but it's sometimes difficult for authors. We can be, introspective people that uh, maybe don't always like getting out and about. But it's so good for you. And to find other authors that can be with you along the way, be journey down the same path together, it makes the writing process a little bit less lonely. And so it's something even authors that find me without having been to conferences, I often suggest to find either a conference or library event, but something just to get out there and find other like-minded people.
Absolutely. And you can always join my Messy Muse on Facebook and hang out with a bunch of cool kidlit people and folks involved in writing. So there's those online communities as well. Stephanie, I know that we may be short on time. I have a couple more questions. Do you have time?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. What do you think about rhyming manuscripts? I have one, but I've read not to write these.
Okay, so this must be a picture book question.
Yes.
And so If you want to go global, translating rhyme doesn't always work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if the rhyming scheme is what makes your book, then it might be difficult to go from English to Italian because you want to have rhyming again, but it doesn't always translate that way. So, that is one of the reasons why it can be somewhat frowned on. It's just difficult to do. And I feel that often it feels forced when someone has a rhyming picture book manuscript. And so that is why, I mean, if you can do it and it doesn't feel forced, then they still are out there. People still are publishing rhyming picture books. So I don't know if I'd say I'm 100% against it. It's just very difficult to do.
Okay. Next question. Do agents ever look at more than one manuscript to determine if the writer is a good match as a client?
Okay, yeah. So with picture books, that is very possible. With novels, an author might not have. I mean, honestly, by the time they do get to an agent, they probably have multiple manuscripts complete and finished, but it might not always be that way. There are many debut authors. So for them, I might not look at multiple manuscripts. But for a picture book, then I possibly would look at multiple manuscripts with an author before signing.
So you would accept more than one manuscript from a picture book author in a query?
I would like each query to be a standalone,
Mm-hmm.
and only unless it's a series of books that you're mentioning, and then we get the idea of the entire series. But for a query, it's best to make it individualized and only one manuscript at a time. And also, even though that author might get signed, it's very doubtful that all of those manuscripts can be shopped at the same time.
Right.
Because you're going to be hitting up the same publishers, the same editors, more than likely, if they're the same tone and voice. So that's one thing to keep in the back of your mind, is that whether an agent does look at all or one at a time, they can't all be shopped at the same time.
Okay. Next, I have a manuscript at a publisher now for consideration. I do not have an agent, but I am looking. If I get lucky and the publisher likes my manuscript, what will happen if I have no agent?
I would highly suggest having, if you don't get an agent, then I don't know the legal background of this individual, but you need a legal professional to review the contract to make sure you're not signing away anything that you don't want to. I believe it's the National of the Authors Guild that
Mm-hmm.
has, if you are a member, they have where they have like legal in-house that they review contracts for their members. So there's also things like that available. And I can't remember what membership is annually. I think it's somewhere $100 or less. I can't remember.
I think
But
that's right. Yep.
so that's, compared to sometimes attorney fees, that might be more affordable for other writers. But you can look for an agent with that, with the offer in hand. Often a publishing house will give you a time period for negotiation and for review of the contract. And during that time, you can reach out to agents, and you might snag an agent that can then help you negotiate and review that contract and shop your other manuscripts.
And and when you have an offer in hand, when you go to the agents, you would say in your query, I have an offer of publication for this particular manuscript. I'm looking for an agent to represent me, yada yada yada. Correct? I mean, you most certainly would mention the offer of publication.
Yes, I definitely would. And the only thing is just make sure you do actually have an offer of publication. Sometimes the response emails that are sent are somewhat on the flowery side, and because authors have been waiting for so long, they might take a positive email a little bit further than what it's actually saying and
Hmm.
state that they have an offer when they don't in fact have an offer yet. So this industry, it's so exciting, and authors sit around and wait forever. And so when something comes through that is anything positive, sometimes it's hard not to just jump and tell the world about it right that second.
Right, we've
But
done that.
yeah, And it's completely understandable, but I would highly advise, sit back, take a deep breath, wait, and get all your ducks in a row before stepping out.
Okay, great. And the last question, do agents look at other forms of writing from the potential author? Meaning, if they have other published magazine articles, blog posts, etc., will they look at that to determine whether or not they'll take an author on?
Yes and no. That might be visited for platform research, but if it's a different type of writing, this style might be completely different than what the agent is looking to represent, so it might not fit and be a good measurement or for comparison. I like to peruse through literary magazines and see if anything just jumps off the page out at me. And if I find an author like that, I perhaps might even reach out to an author directly.
If you find it in a magazine, but if an author submits a manuscript, you're not necessarily going to sign them because they have other articles that have been published. You're going to sign them on the basis of the manuscript.
Yes, but if you can see that experience with an author, you know that they understand the difficulties of the industry, and some of the things that are required to be successful. And so sometimes it can shed a positive note on that author by sharing that information. So I definitely think if you have writing that is within the realm. Now, if it's nonfiction article that you did as a medical doctor and you're writing, uh, you know, fantasy erotica, I don't know that it would be one and the same because your writing in the novel might be completely different than what your medical article would be about. So those maybe don't share. But if they're within the same creative space, then definitely share those.
Okay, that's good advice. So we are going to wrap up. Is there any parting advice that you would like to give to the folks that are listening?
Just congratulations for writing and picking up writing. I think it's a phenomenal practice, and you're stepping into a wonderful industry. And I know it can be tough, the querying process. Definitely stick with it. It's such a subjective process, and don't take rejection personally. There are executive editors who have wallpapered an entire room with rejections. It's not a reflection upon you as an individual, but definitely reach out to others in critique groups and form a team of your own.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie, so much for being on the podcast. And I should mention now that Stephanie has agreed to open up to queries to My Messy Muse members only for the week of starting Monday, December 17th and closing on Friday, December 21st. And I'll put all that information in the show notes. But please do join the My Messy Muse community on Facebook in order to take part in this very special query window that she's opened up for us. And thank you, Stephanie, for doing that for our members.
No problem.
And have a fantastic day and a fantastic weekend.
All right, you too.
Don't wait for tomorrow.
Thank you for listening. To connect with the My Messy Muse community, please visit us on Facebook at My Messy Muse. To learn more about my books and how to work with me, please visit my website at michellemcavoy.com. That's Michelle, M-I-C-H-E-L-E, McAvoy, M-C-A-V-O-Y.com. Thanks and have a great day.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Live for today. Keep on chasing the sunshine.